All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. If we could all just rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please, and we'll get started. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you all for being here. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't, acknowledge the tragedy that happened in Nashville this afternoon with another school shooting. We can talk all day about just policy has to change. But what I would like to say is honestly, my gratitude to our staff, our administration, our teachers, all the staff who keep our kids safe every day, who watch over them and, I unfortunately have to have that added layer beyond teaching and caring for them, but that really work very hard and choose to come to work every day, even though our country is in the state it's in. So I just want to say thank you for that. And to others who, many of you on the board and others who are in the community working on mental health issues. So trying to prevent things like this from happening and, not backing down. And thank you all. You all know who you are. We're doing that, many of you around the table. So I just, it's heavy on our minds. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. And it does not go unnoticed. And we'll just keep pushing along. So thank you for that. Approval of minutes, please. Any questions, any comments about the minutes?
I had just one correction that needed to be made, I think, with Sarah Willette's last name being misspelled. On page 3 under congratulations to the following Morris High School student athletes. Sarah Willette's last name needs to be corrected.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have the correct spelling? I don't see it on here. I'm sure it's on there.
2 T's at the end?
It has 2 T's.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's correct?
No.
It's not correct. Okay. Oh, it needs the 2 T. Okay. All right. So we'll correct that. Anything else in the minutes from anyone? Okay. Can I have a motion as amended? Yeah, Anita. She moves. Second. Jennifer. Okay. All in favor? All right. Minutes. We have passed the minutes. Adjustments to the agenda. I think the only adjustment we have is we're going to take 12.2, the RTI coordinator update from Beth Kaiser to make it 7.3 under staff reporting. We're not going to make her sit through everything. Let her give us everything as all the other presentations occur. And that was it, right? No other. Okay. So everyone all right with that? Okay. 6.0 public session. Is anyone here from the public to speak about what's on the agenda? I know Ross wants to, but he's just going to sit. Okay. They're done with that. And we move right to staff reports for the fun stuff. Let's go with 7.1, our Fish Friends presentation. I'll hand it over to Patrick for introductions. Thank you.
Yeah, we have 2 staff members here tonight. We have Erica Phippen, who's from Phippsburg, and we have Libby Zipperer from Fisher Mitchell. And then we have 1 student with us. And Porter, I'll apologize if I get your last name wrong, but is it Sabolic or Sabolic? All right. So welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate you giving up an evening to be here and really talking about your salmon project. And so I got to see a little bit of it firsthand last week. So we're excited. So have you come up to the mic and kind of share your Fish Friends kind of project?
Okay. I don't know if I should lift this. All right. Let's see. I can kind of bend up. All right, good evening, everyone. I am Erica Fippen, a fourth grade teacher at Phippsburg Elementary School, and I'm here with Libby Zipperer, a fifth grade teacher from Fisher Mitchell School. This year, Libby and I partnered together with the Maine Council of Atlantic Salmon Federation to bring a program called Fish Friends to our students. This program is a 4-month study that aims to educate future generations on the importance of wild salmon and conservation. At the beginning of March, both Libby and I prepared our fish tanks to make sure the water temperature was holding at 35 degrees. On March 8th, each of our classrooms received 200 eyed eggs. Our mentor, Dick Upham, advises and helps us with curriculum support. I know I can speak for Libby and I when I say, once these eyed eggs arrive, there is an excitement within our classrooms that fosters a calling to stewardship. Through daily observations that take place on the microscopic level, students witness firsthand the life that exists inside the egg. Each Atlantic salmon lesson is unique to our own grade level standard. One way in which content is connected is by finding standards that align with our salmon study. An example of combining content to the standards would be Next Generation Science Standard, Grade 4, Life Science, number 1. The standard reads as follows. Animals have both internal and external structures that serve various functions in growth, survival, behavior, and reproduction. So, fourth graders would learn that during smoltification, salmon prepare to migrate from freshwater to the ocean. Cells in their gills undergo chemical changes so they can tolerate salt water, a process controlled by hormones and influenced by physical factors such as salinity, temperature, and light. I would then thread this into geography. The standard reads as follows. Students draw on concepts that processes from geography and understand issues involving people, places, and environments in the community. So fourth graders would then map the main rivers that still have a salmon run and how communities have fought for dam removals. Allow me to read from the Franklin County Bulldog from March of 2021. Wabanaki people played a central role in restoring fish populations and improving water quality on the Penobscot River over the last 20 years. The coalition of Wabanaki and non-native environmental groups achieved 2 dam removals, giving unobstructed access to 2,000 miles of Atlantic salmon habitat. This is just one example of how a program like Fish Friends reaches across different units of study. So you might be wondering, why are we raising Atlantic salmon? The Atlantic salmon is sometimes called the king of fish for their unmatched fighting power and acrobatic leaps. Members of this species undertake an epic journey to complete their life cycle, migrating from freshwater rivers to feeding grounds off the coast of Greenland. And then they return to their natal streams to spawn. But since the 18th century, Atlantic salmon populations have declined dramatically. Atlantic salmon in the United States were once native to almost every coastal river northeast of the Hudson River in New York. There are only a few types of fish that move between freshwater and saltwater, and the Wabanaki people relied heavily on the Atlantic salmon migration. But dams, pollution, and overfishing reduced their population size until the fisheries closed in 1848. Commercial and recreational fishing for wild seed-run salmon is still prohibited in the United States. All Atlantic salmon in the public market is either cultured or commercially grown. Currently, the only remaining wild populations of Atlantic salmon in the United States are found in a few rivers in Maine. These remaining populations are listed as endangered under the Endangered Species Act. The Gulf of Maine DPS has named Atlantic salmon as one of the 8 species in the spotlight. This means that NOAA fisheries have made it a priority to focus on recovery efforts. They want to research to better understand the major threats. Their mission is to stabilize the species by improving access to quality habitat and hopefully preventing extinction. Our students are well aware of the risks our salmon face on their long journey that lies ahead of them. They investigate the reasons why salmon populations have dwindled and learn about their connection to humans throughout history. On April 4th, Libby and I will begin to raise the temperature of our tanks to correlate with the temperature of the Little River in Lisbon. We will match our eyed eggs and we will watch them as they become alevins, and by the end of May, fry. In early June, we will take a field trip together to release our well-developed fry into the Little River, which is a tributary to the Androscoggin. Students watch these Atlantic salmon take their first gulps of water and imprint the river into their systems. I hope that one day the students that have gone through this program will be talking to their children about a time when the Atlantic salmon used to be endangered. They will share how they raised the king of fish in their classroom to help restore the population. And it's because so many people were dedicated to the protection and restoration of their environment that they now flourish in Maine rivers today. Thank you all for supporting this and allowing me to speak on the importance of this program. So I'd like to welcome Libby and Porter right now. And just one more note, I'm looking over here, someone else that was part of the program.
Well, I'm Libby Zipperer, everybody. Welcome, and thanks for welcoming us as well. I'm fifth grade at Fisher Mitchell, and I have to say I'm really, really excited to be doing this project with Erica. She and I have found, since I've come to Bath in the last 5 years ago, that we have a lot of very common interests, and we had a good chance to work together last summer out at Burnt Island Lighthouse doing a science adventure program for some of the kids in Booth Bay. So that was really incredible experience. I've been very fortunate in my career to have attended a lot of science workshops, from forests of Maine to anything to do with the Gulf of Maine. It's just a fascination of mine. Strangely enough, I had heard about the Wild Atlantic Salmon Project, but I'd never ever had anything to do with it until I kind of inherited it by default this year, and I'm so happy. So I'm going to be learning about this just as my students are. So you know more than I do. So I'm a work in progress. One thing I will tell you I'm very excited about with this particular program is the ease of using it throughout the entire day. Anything that can become interdisciplinary, you can work it into math, work it into reading. That's real learning. And especially in this age where technology is incredible, but these kids have spent so much time behind screens. It's time for real experiences like this. And I am probably just as excited as they are. Just Erica mentioned some of the things they'll be doing, measuring water temperatures and graphing those, making observations and predictions regarding the fish. They'll most importantly, though, we'll be learning to speak the language of science, which is all around us in the entire world. They'll be using words and actually understanding the words like ecosystem and habitat, diversity, organism, spawning, and most importantly, conservation and preservation of our natural resources. So you have a folder in front of you that has just basic information about the wild Atlantic salmon. And I chose to have my students just write a letter to the school board or to their baby salmon, their eyed eggs, just about the beginning process. So this is where we are in the process. And again, I'm learning with them. So I'd like to introduce my student Porter, who's also a past student of Miss Fippin's, and he's going to read his letter for you.
So I'm one of so my name is Porter and I'm in fifth grade at Fisher Mitchell School, and we've been raising salmon in our classroom, and I'd like to explain the process so far to you. We started off getting the tank, and then Ms. Zipperer got rocks and put them in the tank. Then we put the water in. It had to be fresh water with no chlorine so it would not affect the salmon eggs. A volunteer from the Fish Friends program, Mr. Upham, came and brought the salmon from the fish hatchery at Green Lake in Ellsworth, Maine, in the eyed egg stage. We will be keeping the eyed eggs at 35 degrees Fahrenheit for a few weeks, and then slowly begin to warm the water by 1.5 degrees at a time. This will mimic the natural water as it warms in the spring. The baby salmon will hatch eventually and become an alvin with a yolk sac. Then, once the yolk sac is all gone, it's called a fry. It is this time that we will be releasing them into the freshwater river. It's a fry for about 2 to 3 months. Then it will start to develop camouflage. That's when it's called a par. For 2 to 3 years, the par grows in freshwater before transforming into smolts in early spring. The silvery smolt scales and organs change, allowing them to breathe and swim to the ocean, where they spend 1 to 2 years maturing into adults. They will travel thousands of miles up towards Greenland and other places in the Atlantic. The adult Atlantic salmon then return to the river where they were born, letting their sense of smell guide them. That's where they lay up to 8,000 eggs, and then the life cycle repeats. I hope you enjoyed my article. Sincerely, Porter Shabalik at FMS.
It's a great job. Thank you, Porter. Thank you all. Do we have questions for them? Yes, Jennifer.
I have a question for Porter. Porter, what's an eyed egg?
It's basically like the head of the salmon when it's in the
So does it actually have an eye that's looking at you?
well, I don't really know.
My other question was, are these the touch tanks that we used to have? Different? No. And is there a backup for if they need power to keep warm or keep the water moving? Is there a backup plan in Phippsburg?
Yeah, I can answer that to some degree. I'm assuming we do. I mean, for example, when we lost power, that was Sandra's biggest concern was the actual touch tank that's at Phippsburg. And I would assume the same thing would be we have a portable generator that we can bring down. But Eric, anything else?
It also, kind of just running in. I live right by Phippsburg Elementary School, so I was able to grab my eggs and keep it at a constant 35 degrees by feeding ice. I felt like I had a newborn again. Every 2 hours, the alarm would go off, and but yeah, just getting generators and things like that, and possibly a backup battery. Yes.
Okay, so I know I did this at Fisher Mitchell School, and you're teaching at Phippsburg now, right?
Correct.
So is it not being taught at Fisher Mitchell anymore? Oh, okay, okay. I didn't know if you guys were both working at Phippsburg together or okay. Awesome. That's good to know.
Exactly.
I have a
Go
question
ahead.
for Porter. What are you looking forward to most with this project?
Mainly watching them grow, then releasing them.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty cool, I think.
Other questions, comments? That's great. Thank you so much for taking the time, Porter. You did great. Thank you for being here, and we're excited to see this continue. Thank you so much. Next, we have the STEM presentation. Patrick?
Yeah, next up we have Monica Wright and Karen DeSilva to kind of educate the board, but also the public that may be listening about our upcoming STEM City. Damon, you all set with?
Hi, everybody. So, getting ready for next week, April 6th on Thursday night, is going to be our STEM City. Right. So, to build excitement on that, all the schools are not local nonprofits, local businesses, all the way up to BIW, are going to be here at Morse High School and Bath Tech. And you can imagine the entire gym all these hallways. I've looked at every single outlet. I know exactly what we're going to be doing in terms of celebrating the collaboration that our community has around STEM thinking, STEM practices, and innovation. And the way that's going to happen is when we're all sort of in the same space, getting excited about that. So I'm Monica Wright, 8th grade science teacher at Bath Middle School, and this is Karen. What, you want to introduce yourself?
Karen De Silva, community member, parent.
And for some reason, we said yes. So here we are, co-organizing this event. One, we want you to come, and we've, yeah, Natalie's in there. A younger Natalie is in there with, which was an event that kind of grew out of April 2019 when we were at Bath Middle School. And this time we decided to be more ambitious. You like to do that? Yeah, and so this time all the schools are gonna be represented and really having it here at our showcase facility. So thanks, Patrick, for making sure that happened. As he was putting the thumb on us to make sure it came over here to Bath Tech. So with what's already happening at our schools is that at Dyke Newell, which I have some photos, which I might send out, and some flyers when I come around. Yeah, that'd be good. At Dyke Newell, the librarian has already been showing excitement for this by having STEM challenges that have been going home. And so students have been doing weekly STEM challenges at home and also some in the library program. So there isn't one of every one. I just sort of did a random amount. So you can kind of send some down. Yeah, that would be great. And also doing some programming in the library at Phippsburg, right? Phippsburg, yay. Erica volunteered to be the STEM person, which is an easy fit, to help coordinate the things at Phippsburg. And Mary McCauley has been working with the outdoor classroom and already having all grade levels at Phippsburg participating. I'm not there, so I'm looking to you guys to see how great it's already happening. And at Fisher, it's already been, Ross just got invited today from a class that went to the library as part of a lesson in terms of how to write an email. And so in that email, you got invited to come by a 5th grader, which means you must have said yes already. And the another 4th grade class at Fisher took the flyer that Karen made and redesigned it as a way to kind of interpret what was going on with the lesson in terms of the flyer so they could learn about their tech lesson in library class and then redesign it for what they were doing. And in Bath Middle School next week, the library is also going to have robots and little tiny kinetic toys they're going to create as a way for people to get excited about coming to STEM City. So, yeah. You want to talk about the community part?
Sure. Monica and I, partners in crime, we've kind of split it up. She has done an amazing job just connecting with all the schools and the teachers and the kids, getting some programming. I took on the community side. So we started with BIW. BIW is bringing their integrated design team. So from virtual reality to drones to 3D printing and augmented reality. Maritime Museum is involved. This year, the city of Bath. So their head departments, police, fire. I believe Brenda even has a fun math game on how to figure out your property taxes. Just hold that thought. And then we've got who else do we have? Oh, University of Maine. Their roadshow for science is coming, so it's supposed to be even better than last time. I believe we're gonna take the cafeteria. Is that correct? Like that side? Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Monica's still working things out. Yeah. So ultimately, we've got the big players. We've got a lot of small players. The Girl Scouts. Now You're Cooking. Matero Design. The nice thing about, I think from when we first started this in 2019, STEM night was still sort of like not a new unique concept, but something that people were just starting to figure out. When we started looking at it last year, it felt like everybody had done a STEM night. And when we kind of reflected on what really made this STEM night so much what we think was so much better was the engagement with the community, like how they all came out for the kids, right? And so what it's kind of become is like, anybody can put a STEM night together, and they tend to target kids that are already academically minded, right? The A+ student that is already tracked to like math or science or engineering. But what we do is we've created a STEM city so that they could see how innovation, like the magic of innovation, is actually intertwined in everything that you see around Bath. So it really, like this is what we have said on the website, it takes a village to create a bright future for a kid. And you'll see it with like these businesses are sort of creating like science projects for the kids so that they can see how what they do is really tied. Like we were talking to one of the tattoo parlors in Bath, and he was saying, you know what, a kid will say, I don't need math and science. I just want to I want to be a tattoo artist. But it's like, no, you need to know about the layers of the skin and like, all the science stuff. So anyway, we're really excited about it. Next week is the big day, and we hope we'll see you guys all there.
Hey, you guys got any questions?
Any questions, anybody? About what it's like? Jennifer?
Do you guys ever work with the Girls Can Code program? Does that ever come up in any of the? They're kind of a national program.
So originally we weren't going to say no to anything, but when we started envisioning this idea of like our STEM city, we wanted to connect with things that were really tied to Bath. So there are things like Engineers Without Borders that are going to be there, are coming, but they're connected to the University of Maine. So we haven't gone too far out, just because so many people in Bath wanted to help. And I think it's great for a kid to be able to connect with something that they already know and didn't realize like how connected they are to STEM. But if you have a contact, you can send it my way. We'll set them up at the table.
I have a quick question. Do you anticipate a lot more people this year than you have had in the past, or you do? Yeah, you have good feedback. What about like a guide when people come? Will there be like you can go here, and kind of see what you want to see and not miss the cool stuff?
The map, right?
Yeah, there's gonna be a map, and also the screens that are inside, like there's one right there. Those are also gonna have some information on them, as the same. And so other things over there for our events, as well as a map, but I don't want also just a ton of paper that comes.
Sure.
It's gonna be this floor, and this floor is really accessible in terms of all the classrooms. Not the theater.
I have a 4th grade son who loves science, so this will be our first year checking it out. We're pretty excited.
And I just thought of something. As a business or an organization, there's actually 3 ways that they can help. One is they can do a table, and then 2, they can help us pay for raffle tickets and door prizes, and then 3, they can volunteer. So we're definitely building lists on all 3. But we have we've been working with Island Treasure Toys, and on Saturday I went out to the Freeport just because it's a bigger store. We pulled presents for each grade. And so to encourage our kids to come, they're going to put their raffle ticket in the class, like in the grade. So like Phippsburg, Woolwich, and the elementary schools here in Bath would all like compete for the 3rd grade prize or the 4th grade prize. And each prize is somewhere between maybe $26 and maybe $64, some of the older grades. But they were really great to give it. And now I'm going to go door to door. So Lou, I'm coming for you. You already told me yeah, I could come visit. So, but anyway, I mean, it's great to see businesses. They all want to help in some way.
Great. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Sounds like a great evening. Thank you for all the detail. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right. You want to introduce?
Yeah, so just a special thank you, Monica and Karen. I know it's like a second job for you, and it's been a lot of work over the last couple months. So really do appreciate your organization, follow through, and making this a reality for the students in our district. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Take care.
Katie, you got your mic on. Do you want?
Sure. Beth Kaiser, if you want to come up to the microphone. Many board members asked a few months ago, the new position we added, the RTI coordinator for the district. We hired Beth Kaiser, who hopefully will share a little bit about her long history here in the district quickly as she introduces herself. But she's going to just share a little bit about what she's been doing in the new role and how it's been helping our students. So I'm going to turn it right over to her.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Beth Kaiser. My email is always ekaiser because I'm Elizabeth, but I go by Beth. I started my teaching career in a really small town in northern Japan, teaching English for grades pre-K 8 in the public schools there. After those 3 years, I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I co-taught in 4th and 5th grade classrooms in a charter school for Milwaukee Public Schools, and the charter was all about inclusion. And then from there, I moved to Maine, where I've spent the last 20 years, about 20 years, working here. I started at Georgetown as a special education teacher. Then I moved to Woolwich as a special education teacher. And then I left Woolwich to work for a year as a math interventionist to start the math programs in our schools. And then I went back to Woolwich as a K through 5 interventionist. And that's what brought me here to this position. As an RTI coordinator, one of the big things I'm working on is making sure our instruction meets the needs of all of our learners. Through that work, I work with 3 tiers of instruction. And when we talk about the 3 tiers in our district, we talk about tier 1, which refers to classroom instruction, tier 2, which refers to interventions, and then tier 3, which refers to special education instruction, which specific plans are determined by the IEP teams. Some examples of the work that I do at each of the tiers is what I'm going to talk about next. So first is tier 1, and in any RTI model, tier 1 is essential. It's that classroom instruction that everyone participates in. So a lot of my work has been focused around curriculum. For example, at the beginning of this year, we switched to the updated version of the program we use to teach phonemic awareness. I know Leslie Gallant came in, I think it was last year, and shared examples of that. But phonemic awareness encompasses all of the skills that we teach to help students notice the sounds within words. So for example, for cat, students have to understand, oh, that's not just one sound, that's k, at. And as you can imagine, those skills are so important for learning reading and spelling. And so we target those in pre-K, K, and first grade. Well, Heggerty, which is the program we use, made some updates to respond to the science of reading and all the research that's going around. And so we made that shift. And at the beginning of the year, I worked with pre-K, K, and first grade teachers to make sure they understood the shifts in a program that they were already using. Another example is more recently during our late start Wednesdays and grade level days and during our PD time, I trained the K first and second grade classroom teachers, K5 interventionists, and special ed teachers in our ed techs and how to use a program called UFly, which is a new phonics program that we are going to start teaching in the fall. And there's so much excitement around that. It's really exciting for me to see. But one of the things that we wanted to really think about is how to train so that people had enough time to really think about it before they're expected to implement in the fall. And actually, I'm going to share an example of one of the steps of UFly with you all in a few minutes. So in addition to supporting teachers' use of curriculum, I'm also working to strengthen our use of and create consistency around how we use assessments. So we currently use a program called Linkit to record our assessment data. And I'm working to make sure that these data sets are usable within Linkit so teachers can better analyze their class results to help inform instructional decision making. I'm also supporting Tier 1 through other professional development, through Late Start Wednesdays or facilitating grade level meetings, and through work on district-wide committees. And that can be at the school level, the district level, the individual group level. It just depends on what the needs are within that Tier 1 or Tier 2. So within tier 2, which is our interventions level of instruction, I've been able to support the interventions teams at each school, and that's something that is really exciting about this position. I'm able to meet regularly with the interventionists as they work through the necessary processes for tier 2, such as screening, analyzing data, setting up their plans for small groups. This is really helpful in reinforcing and unifying our practices from school to school within the district. And because I can do this work by meeting with the teams at their schools as they need it, that has freed up our monthly intervention meeting times to really focus on learning. So we are deepening our learning with a book study of a book called Figuring Out Fluency, which is all about making shifts in how we think about what it means to be fluent in mathematics, which is our district focus at tier 1, 2. Another example of tier 2 work I do is working with the Woolwich and Bath Middle School teams around their RTI processes. So for tier 3, which is the special ed instruction, I meet with instructional teams when they're considering doing a special ed referral. So if a student has been in interventions and they're looking at the data and they're thinking, you know, I think we need to take another step to find out more information, I meet with those teams to look at the history of and the progress in current interventions. I also am consulting with special education teachers around specific students as needs come up. Sarah Rent has shared that with the special ed teams when she meets with them, that if they have concerns or they need a brainstorming partner, I'm available to do that. And I am working with a couple teachers right now. A lot of my work happens really where those tiers intersect. One example of this kind of work is through what we call our collaboration meetings. These are short data-based meetings when the instructional teams meet to review current data and then collaboratively make decisions around instructional goals and methods. So every student in interventions is met about several times a year by these instructional teams. These happen at each school, and they're scheduled so that I can be a facilitator for those meetings. Now, as I mentioned before, those are just some examples of some of the work that I do with the various tiers, but I'd like to show you, switch gears, and show you an example of the type of training that we were doing at the tier 1 and with special ed teachers and interventionists as part of our new phonics program. So I brought for you the magnetic letter boards that every kindergarten, first grader, and second grader is going to have in their classrooms next year to use for this work. We've been piloting this in a second grade classroom at Woolwich. So let's So what's cool about this program that we brought in is that there's not that many materials required. It's a manual and then these letter boards, which were recommended by the people who piloted the program. It's from the University of Florida Literacy Institute. And I'm going to talk you through one of the 8 steps that students will do over 2 days of phonics instruction. And in fact, I wanted to mention that I was just meeting with a kindergarten teacher today who is trying this out tomorrow in her classroom because she's so excited about it. So that's exciting. So our new program provides word chains that use phonics patterns that we're focused on in our lessons. So a word chain is a list of words where only one part of the word changes at a time to make a new word. So for example, think about the word dog. If you change the D to an L, it turns into log. So that's an example of a word chain. Just one thing is changing, and it really helps kids focus on thinking about the sounds and the letters that represent those sounds. So what we learned about is that teachers, depending on the prompting that they use, can decide if students will focus on reading skills or spelling skills through this activity. The program recommends that we alternate, like we go from reading, then to spelling, then to reading, then to spelling. And a word chain can have up to like 10 words. So you get 10 different opportunities within this quick activity. But what we're practicing is trying to be really intentional about the prompts that we use, whether we want to focus on that reading or spelling. So I thought we could try some so you can see what it feels like. And think about, as you're trying it, the language that I'm using as your teacher and also what you're having to do as a student. So these are examples from a lesson where students are learning the long vowel pattern of adding an E to the end of a single syllable word to make the vowel say its name. So first, I'm going to give you a direction, and you can make the word by bringing down the letters right in this spot right here. All right? So go ahead and make the word tap. Thank you, Katie. All right. Did everybody make the word tap? All right. What letters did you use to make the word tap, everybody? Great. So now add an E at the end. Read the word that you make in your mind. Don't say anything out loud. Read it in your mind. All right. What word did everybody make? Okay. So see where if you're just learning that pattern, that is reading practice. All right. So change one letter to turn tape into tame. All right. So you can see how that really targets spelling skills because I already told you the word. You don't have to read it. You have to figure out how to spell it. All right. Make a change to turn tame into time. What do you all think? Were we targeting reading there or spelling? Spelling, right? Because I told you what to do, of what word to make. You had to figure out how to make it. All right, last one. Change the T to an L. And remember, read the word in your mind, not out loud. What word did everybody make? Lime, and that one targets reading skills. So that's just an example of one of the steps that students are going to be going through on day 2 of their phonics lessons when they're targeting patterns. And that's the kind of work that we were doing last Friday when we were all learning together. So thanks for listening. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That's great. Questions? But Jennifer has a question.
Yeah, we have questions, many questions. First of all, it's more of a comment. I was reading all the board reports today for our meeting, and I was amazed at how articulate all of the professional development sections were and how detailed they were. And I know that comes from having a very specific agenda and goals set up and activated, really, being efficient with the teacher's time. So I wanted to first thank you and Katie for that, because that's a direct reflection of great instruction, I think, for the teachers. The other piece I was kind of interested in is, do you have a sense of how your division of time is between doing professional development of classroom teachers and professional development of interventionists?
That's something I could probably look back and find more specifics for you. But I think what's interesting is that it intersects so often. Like we're training tier 1, we're training classroom teachers in how to use UFly, but it's also being piloted to use for interventions for older students. And we want interventionists to be able to differentiate from it. So it's kind of both in that regard. I think for the late start Wednesday time, a lot of it is centered on interventionists, like our book study or some of the systems that we are using. But then also when I'm meeting with teachers one-on-one, it can really just depend on what's coming up. Like for example, I was meeting with a team today that was a classroom teacher and an interventionist. And when I'm meeting with a special ed teacher, it often includes work with the classroom teacher. So I know that's not a clear answer for you.
I guess I was interested because one of our board goals this coming year, not this year, but the coming year, I think is going to focus around elementary needs in our system because we've kind of been focusing on older students for a while. And so one of the thing, I think one of the goals is to get more data. And I love that the data can kind of tell us how we're getting a systemic, approach to these types of things and how we can be district-wide and share knowledge across. So it's kind of one of the reasons I was asking about that percentage of time, because hopefully at some point you'll help us with some data so we can talk about how we're making academic goals in certain areas and where the more need is. So thank you for
Yes.
all that you do.
That's a good point. Thank you. And I can keep that in mind as I'm moving forward and thinking about how to record how I spend my days. Thank you.
Great. Anyone? Yeah, go ahead, Patricia.
I have a curious question. The double letters, why are like F's and L's double?
Oh, great question. So that was actually, it came about because Donna Tardif, who's a first grade teacher at Phippsburg, had seen other magnetic letter boards that were set up this way. It wasn't like that at first. We always had the double letters, and they are part of what some people call the floss rule. Like if there's a short vowel in a single syllable with those letters, you have to double it. And that's part of what we teach for this phonics scope and sequence. But she had seen where it was actually set up that way on the letter board where you ended with those letters. And so we tried to do that too, and we were able to make it fit.
Miss Tardif calls the E the bossy E, makes the vowel say its name.
Yes. Yeah. It's true.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Well, first of all, thank you. And Beth probably does 30 more things that she didn't list on here, but I'm wondering if you could just share for the board, because part of, what we really wanted out of this position was to make sure there was consistency between regular education, intervention, and special education, which you clearly described. But I'm wondering if you could, without saying names, like share a situation that you were able to catch this year of, something not being consistent or a student falling through the cracks. Like now that the collaborations are happening and you're kind of overseeing this, I just want the board to be aware of the level of detail and oversight we're able to have for every single student now, which is unlike we were able to do before.
Yes, it's a great question, and always a work in progress too. I think some specifics are through, like, for example, my data review. When I'm looking at our screening data and we have criteria that we use to see, like, who should we look at further to see if they need interventions. And by looking at grade level data after our screening processes, I can look and see who we may need to look at that didn't get picked up. It hasn't happened that often, but something else that happens, I think, more frequently is in our collaboration meetings when we have a chance to really look at data and talk about how kids are doing. I was sharing with Katie that having the same data sets has been really helpful for teachers. We're learning more to talk about how not only they do on one assessment, but how our assessments work together. We have to really help us identify needs. Like we have a phonemic awareness assessment that tells us how kids are segmenting words into sounds, like that example I gave you with cat. And then we're also able to look at, well, how are they writing? Are they able to think about the sounds, but they're not able to write the letters for those sounds? And that helps us really cater our interventions to, like, oh, they can segment that word into sounds, but they don't have a fluent access to the letters to use yet. So that's what we need to work on. So those are the kinds of levels of specificity that we're able to get to. And what's really cool for me to see, just has been cool to see my whole career, is that the more you do this, the better you get at it. And what you use for one student, you can then extend and use, the next time you look at those same data sets for different students. So I'm not sure if that really answers what you were asking.
It's great. Yeah, it's an amazing amount of work that you do, especially because you're working. I think that combination of, figuring out the assessment tools and how to do it on the one hand, that sounds like almost the whole job all by itself. And then to be working with the teachers themselves on other things is just amazing. So is there more? I mean, there's always more, I guess, but is it, are you able to handle all the different, I mean, has it been overwhelming? Has it been, you're figuring out, okay, if I, this is the right pattern and I can fit it all in, or how is it coming across to you so far?
That's a great question. This is my first year in a
Right.
new role.
Mhm.
That is, there's a lot of systems that just happen at certain times during the year. And so, I'm making notes for myself, like make sure I clear my schedule a little bit more
Yeah.
around the screening times because people
Sure.
need help. And I want to be more available. So those kinds of things I'm figuring out this year and I will be better at next year. I think the thing that I always want more time for is, and part of it is just the nature of it, is coordinating with the individual teachers or groups that are thinking, like, we've done this, now what? For example, I'm going in to model a lesson later this week at the middle school. And, scheduling that is something that we've been able to work out, but it's always like, you want to try to handle those things as soon as possible because teachers are asking for that, and I can do it. I just need to find the time to
Right.
do that.
So you think so your part of your plan is to look at, okay, how did this year go? What was I able to do? What makes sense? How can this fit into the next year? And
Yes.
then you'll have a better idea of what
Yes.
the responsibility. Okay.
I
That's
think
good.
so. And also, like, we're bringing in a new phonics program. So
Yeah.
Katie and I have already talked about, like, I want to be more present at our K2 school because they're all going to be trying something new.
Mm-hmm.
And this year we started the year where I spent one day at Dyke-Newell, one day at Fisher Mitchell, and then the other schools, as needed. And I think now that I've spent almost a year doing that, I'm thinking, like, is it better to be there in the morning? And so, when they're actually teaching that content. So I think part of it's looking at school schedules and just figuring out how I can be the most present in the way that's most effective. And that will come, year by year. But you're right. I already have plans for
Yeah, no, that's
designing
great.
it for next year.
No, because I know this was a much anticipated position, and so it's great to hear what you're doing, and it'll be great to hear then as it's assessed, and you'll tell us we need 2 more of you to do the whole job probably, but that's okay. So thank you. Did you have another comment?
I hope that you get a chance to keep connection with kids. Like, it's really important. I think it's important for your own happiness, but also to be able to get too far away from that end result. I think it's harder for the teachers who are on the front line actually doing it for that relationship, but also just for your own edification. I think that the power behind what you've done is that connection directly with kids, and I hope you get a chance to keep that part of your busy schedule, because I think that just feeds all aspects of intervention. So
yes,
I hope you get that.
Yes, I am working with individual kids sometimes to do assessments or to do follow-up assessments, or like I mentioned, to model teaching for teachers. And I agree with you. Like, that's my heart, working with students and getting to talk to them about their reading. And I am finding moments to do that where it really makes sense for the position that I'm in.
Absolutely.
So I absolutely agree.
Well, thank you. It's very exciting work, and obviously you're very passionate about it, and it shows, and we appreciate you bringing it to us.
No
Thanks
problem.
a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Some great reports, staff reports. Committee reports. Finance Committee, did you want to comment on where we're at?
I think just for a brief thing now is just to let people know that the Finance Committee met for 2 fairly lengthy afternoon evenings to do cost center reviews, and then also had another meeting after that to provide direction to the administration about the first reading of the budget that we'll go over tonight. But I think probably just leave it there, and then when we get to later in the agenda on the actual first reading of the budget, we can go into more detail.
Great. And how about Facilities Committee?
Yeah, on facilities, we met on the 21st of March, and we reviewed information from Best Practice Energy, and the Facilities Committee would like to enter into an agreement with them, which is about progressive purchasing and methods to assist with energy management to help us in the future. And we can, at the April meeting, have a rep from that organization come and do a quick presentation. And so, Patty, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that or not.
Great, thank you. Any questions from anybody on this? Okay. Our student board rep reports from our 2 spring athletes down there.
Hello.
Hello.
I
What
want
you
to
got?
start with the BRCTC report, which focuses mostly, it mentions STEM City, and then the March 16th and 17th, Bath Tech went to Skills USA, and I believe we had at least 3 people win first. 4 people win
No, sorry.
first.
Yeah, 4 gold.
4
I
gold.
think 1 silver, 1 bronze.
Yes, and so I believe they then get to go to Atlanta, Georgia later in the year or this summer. So Morse did very, very well in those programs, or BRCTC, not just Morse. In terms of Morse, this past March 1st, the Morse Women's Empowerment Club hosted the Women in the Community Gallery, hopefully the first annual. We had upwards of 70 people attend, which was really, really cool to see, and the display is currently in the library if you want to check it out. The upcoming musical, The Addams Family, is on April 7th and 8th. And in terms of normal day-to-day stuff, we've had class signups. Seniors have decisions rolling in. Most of those should be done in the next week. And a lot of scholarship applications. So.
Okay, so for my end of things, BMS and Morse both started spring sports today, which is exciting. I'm pretty sure grades for us are closing for the quarter this Friday. And yeah, that's pretty much it on our end.
All right, any questions for our students? Thanks for reporting out, appreciate it. Go ahead, Patrick, on superintendent's report.
You guys are so thorough, it helps me out. But I do want to, we had 15 Bath Tech students go to the Skills USA, and we had 4 gold medals: wedding cake decorating, cabinet making, architectural drafting, and cosmetology. We had 1 silver in automotive maintenance and light repair, and a bronze medal in carpentry. So congratulations to all of them. Fine Arts Night was held March 1st, and just a wonderful evening filled with student artwork, musical theater, rock ensemble, band and choral groups, and just an event that really shows off the talents of our students. Battle of the Books, which is an academic competition, Megan's part of that, is this Thursday, March 30th at 6 p.m. at Woolwich. And again, it's just a great event to see students. Yeah, it gets competitive, but it's a great academic competition. And then lastly, just to let you know, we had 3 teams of Odyssey of the Mind that competed from Woolwich. We had a K2 team that competed. We had a 4th and 5th grade that competed, and our 6th grade team won 3rd place. So congratulations to those teams, and thank you to the parents that give up their time to volunteer to lead those groups. And that's it.
Great. Deb, you're up. Finance report.
Exciting things happening, huh? See, and I wanted to be a teacher, Katie. We have a luncheon on Friday, and we were all asked to say what other job would like to do in the district. So, but I don't know now. Listening to some of that. Bus driver, cook. Yeah, fun stuff. Okay, so tonight we're looking at the month of February. This is the 8th month, 66% of the year. And we have spent 60% of our budget, almost $24 million, and encumbered for salaries for the remainder of the year is about $11.5 million. Things are going well, nothing unusual jumping out and that was the same case last month. So we're on a good streak. Just always keeping our eye on tuition, outside placements, transportation, that type of thing. Just trying to use up any grant funding that's available. Keep us on track. And revenues, we're up a little bit in revenues, 68%. So everything's coming in as planned. Once again, interest on investments is higher than what was budgeted by quite a bit. ARP, we are at 49%, and so that's we project that we'll have about 50% that will take us through all of next year. So that's basically it.
Great. Any questions for Deb? I know Jennifer has one. Go ahead, Jen.
I missed my other person who says questions. I didn't sound so curious. I was reading in one of the board reports that we may have had some unexpected expenses for some of our special ed students who just came to the district and meeting those needs. You know, is that somewhere in here when we have a really high needs kid
So
coming for?
basically usually what happens is they may put them with a one-to-one ed tech for a couple of weeks until they see how things are going.
Okay.
I haven't been told that there needs to be one for the remainder of the year, but basically we can cover that with maybe substitute money or, you know, ups and downs from staffing in ed tech positions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding? Nope, not right now, but you know what's coming. So we'll be talking budget in a minute. All right, old business. So now we're at the second reading of these board policies. The revenues from investments, the student activities funds, fixed assets, audits, financial monitoring, petty cash accounts, tax sheltered annuities, and graduation requirements. These were all, you know, it's the usual review from the state, right? And before we take action or anything, does anyone from the policy committee want to comment on anything?
I just want to publicly thank Kim for the help that she does with this. We have a lot of edits that happen that come in that we have to make, you know, because state law changes and we've got recommendations through legal things and things like that. But on top of all that, Kim has gone and really helped us look at these policies. So they talk about our district with consistency, and they also talk about parents and students with respect and understanding. And she's, of all the other additions and edits you have to make, you've actually been able to start doing that. And it, just as someone reading it, they sound like they're more like the way we talk and our kind of ethics in our school system. So I want to thank you for that. And also, it's hard work because it takes a lot of bringing in a lot of other different skill sets to do policy work. And we've got a great team that does that. And we all bring in our kind of professional experience, but we also have people from the community that come in and really help us understand readability, because these policies are not just for us, they're for the public. And there are just so many great contributions to that team that I think I've been doing this for most of my time here. So there are early morning meetings that Patrick is at, we're all at, and it takes a lot of work behind the scenes, and the policies are important because they make us reflect on how we want to be consistent in our district, but also how, you know, times change and there are different things to consider. So I want to first thank Kim and everybody else who works on them. And I don't think I have any specifics about the individual policies that we're looking at now.
Great, well said. Thank you for articulating all that. Yes, Jane.
I noticed something last night which surprised me because I've read this graduation requirements policy a number of times over the last year. And why it hasn't stuck out to me before now, I'm not sure. But let's see, halfway down the page on the first page of the requirements, it says a student who is deficient in the above listed requirements. And I wondered if we could modify that language to say maybe a student whose credits are deficient versus a student who is deficient. Or if that, yes, that would be better.
What, who has not met? Sorry. Anything else? Was that it, Jamie? From that? Okay. Anyone have anything else on that policy or others? Okay, then if people are willing to do this all at once, then can we have a motion, I guess, with that? Please mention that amendment.
I motion that we approve all of the second reading policies, including the amendment to revise the wording on the graduation policy.
Great. And second by Jamie. And any further questions for discussion? No? All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, we are good. All those have passed. Thank you all for your hard work on that. And thank you again, Jennifer, for articulating that so well. What do we have next? The second page. Okay, now we move on to new business. And speaking of graduation, we're not done yet. Consider awarding a state set minimum graduation diploma. This is an action item, and you've received information on this from Patrick. We've talked about this quite a bit, but if you want to, or Katie? Okay, Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, so hopefully the backup that we gave you made sense, but just to remind everybody, this would only be for probably 3 to 6 students. It's in line with the state's considerations of how the pandemic has affected the last 4 years of education for our students. And this would be the last group that they'd also consider changing the graduation requirements for because of the impact of COVID. And for the students who it is applicable for, they still need to meet the minimum core requirements. So for instance, the English credits that are required for passing and whatnot. So their credits will fall not necessarily at 11, which is the state, but probably anywhere from 11 to 18, which was our CPP guesstimate of what we wanted to shoot for. And so I think finally, Mr. Varney and Patrick and myself are in support of this, just because it feels like the last chapter of sort of what we've fairly done for each of the classes that's come before. And this one seems no different. And probably we should have had the forethought last spring to just do 2 years. But, everything happened so quickly that we didn't. So I think that while Mr. Varney's not here, he's very much in support of this going through.
Okay, great. Yeah, Natalie.
Just to clarify, this is the last year that this would happen because my grade's the last one that experienced. Okay.
Any questions on this? Then may I have a motion regarding passage of this?
I move to approve awarding a state set minimum graduation diploma for this 2023 year.
Okay, may I have a second? Second from Megan. Any further discussion or questions regarding this? All right, then all those in favor? And any opposed? Okay, it passes. Thank you very much. And we are moving ahead. All right, first reading of our proposed fiscal year 2024 school budget, proposed school budget. So I think, Patrick, you handed out all this material, and if you'd like to address it.
So just first, I'll go through the process, just that the board meets with the administrative team starting in December, January, with kind of a retreat to talk about areas of concern and also things that are going well. And then principals and directors get input from their staff regarding the non-labor budgets. And then, as I mentioned before, the finance committee has 2 long afternoon, evening meetings, and they go through each cost center with administrators. And it also includes a comprehensive analysis of their budget lines that are either have significantly increased or decreased. And tonight we're here for a first reading, but even after tonight, we have public forums on April 10th. and the 24th, and the second reading of the budget on May 1st. And that second reading, that's when the board votes to adopt the budget, and it becomes the board's budget at that time. And then on May 30th, we have the district budget meeting, and then the budget validation referendum is on June 13th. So it's a long process. Tonight is really just introducing that first reading of the budget. There's no vote needed, anything like that. It's really to have a discussion. And then we come back next time on April 10th to, talk about it again and get public input if there is any. Budget itself, just a few things I mentioned is in FY23 right now, we have 17.1 positions funded by ARP federal money. And what we're projected to do for next year is have 11.1. Our enrollment remains stable around 1,750 to 1,800 students. We received an additional $43,000 in state subsidy for FY24. And I guess I would say the greatest challenge we face this year is just the cost of electricity, supplies, energy. And for next year, we will see the dropping off of funding of ARP money after next year. And we do have, I think the board's well aware of this, but we do have 4 additional social workers in this budget. Well, not in this budget, in ARP funding. And keeping some of these positions eventually is the priority of the administrative team as we see the needs and the demand, and also the MIHAS data that the board got the chance to kind of review at a past meeting. So after the finance committee meetings, then the finance committee came together one more time and kind of directed the administration to try to go back and find some reductions. And we found, Deb, you might want to help me on this, but I think we found $250,000 to $300,000 worth of some reductions. One area that we went to was supplies, and we asked the principals and directors to try to reduce some of their supplies. And board members, you have a one-pager that tells you where that came from in kind of general terms. And then we also were able to remove some oil at the current Dyke Newell School and fund that through some of the insurance funds. And then there was some playground equipment that we removed from the budget as well. And the other piece that we did was the finance committee asked us to consider raising the fund balance from 800,000 to $1 million. And the board also has I don't know if it's a 5 or 10 year history of the fund balance, but you can see that. And so we've made that adjustment as well. So it's an additional 200,000 in fund balance. So I'll just go over this top sheet real quick and then see and then just turn it over to Lou and the rest of the board. But right now, with those reductions and increasing the fund balance, the local contribution for the first reading is 3.54%. And the actual increase for total expenses is 3.21%. What that means for towns is a large increase for Arousik, 12.57. A lot of that has to do with they have additional students, and they only have so many students, so it does have a great impact on them. For Bath, it would be 2.75%. Phippsburg, 4.41, and Woolwich, 3.81. And then on the bottom of your cover sheet, I think this is very helpful, is on the blue and white. Well, for the board members, it may not be in color, but on the bottom, it shows from 17-18 until 23-24, what the percentage increase is for each town, which I think is helpful. And the last thing I'll just mention is the board has another sheet because in the finance committee meeting, there was interest in possibly looking to have one social work position taking out of federal money and put into the regular budget, mostly to do with the need for it, but also that, next year's budget is going to be challenged with ARP funds. And so the other sheet is if option 2 for a first reading, which again is just for discussion, is adding in monies for one social work position. And that would bring the local contribution, if that was done, to 4.09%, and the increase on total expenses to 3.48. And then it does raise, obviously, the local contribution to the 4 towns a little bit as well. So, Deb, anything you want to add? No. Yeah. So I'll just stop there. And again, this first reading. So we have, the finance committee asked for us to have kind of two options tonight. But again, we don't need to vote on it. It's more for a conversation tonight. So.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. So you've seen that and you have some detail of where they've asked people, to cut. And this, again, is not written in stone either. As an example, I know that like Jamie and I had talked about, the connections program at Bath Middle School. And I think you had said, Brandon thought he may get some grant funding, so he felt he could cut, half of it. I mean, so there's a lot of things still in play. And I think in terms of some of the money of what it would cost if we're still doing partnerships with Shawanki, we don't have final numbers yet. So some of this could be modified if we're taking something else out or something, or it could be even more of a decrease in the budget if we find other places to cut. So this is just the beginnings, and with some detail, so you can see kind of that range of percentages if we were to make these cuts and then include the social worker, what that might look like. So I think it starts to give everyone some good good ideas and a clearer head about what this really means. But are looking at it, does anyone, this is the time to start discussing it, or if you have questions, or, this isn't, if you don't, that's okay too, but, look at it because we'll be back in a couple weeks. So you can certainly spend the next couple weeks writing down questions and asking where things are, but does anyone, or do you want us to go over anything specific? No? Jennifer?
So one of the cuts, or hopefully, cost saving areas, Patrick, I asked, I don't know if it is able to happen or not, but I believe there was a Bath contract that we have that for some of the work done on the fields up here. And there was a contract that we are in with Bath. And I was wondering, is there any price reduction that we can get in that?
No, I've inquired about one piece of that, but I haven't had a detailed discussion about it, or any feedback as a result.
Okay, it'd be nice to, as if everybody's cutting, it'd be nice to be able to look towards our partners, Bath, and see if they have a way of reducing some of that expense. It'd be good to know about that. And then as I emailed, I had the question of if we put a social work position in the budget, the question is, where are they? How do we, I think it's important to know what that will look like before we agree to put the money towards it. So I don't know if that's a you question or a Katie question, or.
No, we'll have something for the next meeting of exactly where we envision that. Obviously that's, it's our goal would be, it's providing usually one-on-one support, maybe small groups. Doesn't have to be students that are identified. It can be open to any student, but we got to figure out exactly, where that person would be located and provide that detail to you. So.
Yeah, so we're talking about
I
up
know.
to $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just saying because if people are listening, so they understand that it's total amount.
And so if we have a cost, we found a cost savings of, I'm gonna say approximately. Sorry. So if we reduce the budget by 300,000, we're gonna add in 100,000 for the social worker maybe, right? So our total reduction in the budget is about 200,000 from what we were looking at? Okay. And $200,000 in a budget, it doesn't make a big percentage difference when we spread it out across all of our towns, does it? Yeah,
Oh, you look at the difference, it's not a huge,
no.
the difference.
It's a big jump for Woolwich, and we've got a big municipal challenge going on right now, and everybody has a financial challenge themselves with the cost of inflation and food and everything, and I just struggle with that, and I know that our municipal service people are struggling as well, and I'm sure it's not unique to Woolwich, that we're all trying very hard to balance all of these. I respect and admire the cuts that were happening, thank you, and how careful everyone is with the budget. It's a big jump, and I still struggle with trying to get these social work positions filled. I just don't know how to do it. That's just my own
Well,
personal.
Yep.
Thank
I
you.
think, thanks for bringing that up. I think with the state, I mean, it's certainly worth finding out. We're not the only ones facing the cliff next year, and finding out if the state should have a plan. Is there a plan? And certainly it does make a lot of sense that if insurance companies are paying for this, why couldn't they just pay the schools? And that would offset some of those costs. I don't know why, that wouldn't be allowable, but it's certainly stuff we should look into. So even if we are going to do this, maybe there's ways to recoup some of that costs. And it does make sense to ask the state what the greater plan they may be having, because they can't just pretend it's not happening. This is gonna occur. Natalie, a question or comment?
Yeah, it was more of a comment. I think the idea of asking insurance companies to provide funding to school boards and education is really interesting. I think it's a great idea. That's legislation that would have to be passed at a state and federal level, and something that could see it like going through the court systems, because it's a combination of, because you're messing with the private sector. But I think it's really, really intriguing. I guess it's more of a comment, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, well, you'd have to see what it is, because I mean, it's basically what you said. When you go to a counselor and you're already paying the premiums, who they pay shouldn't really matter if somebody's accepting insurance. But I don't know what you have to do to go through that.
Well, and there's requiring them and asking them are two different levels.
Yeah.
So there's something that they could do with themselves. And in Maine, we are unique in the terms where if Anthem wants to sell coverage within this state, they have to agree to sell it in all areas. And we've already have that regulation in place that says, in Maine, if you want to do business here, you've got to provide for everybody and across the board. So it's we have some precedent for that. I think asking is always the best step, because I see on my phone bill that there are so many extra charges and taxes to pay for additional services in our public sector. And so I thought, I don't know if the insurance industry would be willing to do that. I mean, we have wonderful regulators at the state level. Eric Chapa is just an amazing commissioner. So I know that everyone's trying to find these solutions. And I think too that we can always, before we have, federal or statewide, we could always ask for maybe a pilot program, and we would be a wonderful place for that pilot program.
I do think that we, after this budget season, can't really take that break because we are going to have a lot of challenges ahead of us next year. So I would just encourage us all to sort of stay on top of that and to find innovative ways to attract more funding if possible. I would like us to think about the whole learner. And I know that I don't know the history of education well enough to know, when did school nurses become traditional and the norm and something we don't question? When did lunch become something that was the norm that we don't question? And challenge us to think of the whole learner and wonder why, when it comes to mental health, do we all of a sudden say, you know, that's not really our responsibility. We have to innovate around disruption. COVID-19 has been a disruption. The youth mental health crisis that is, you know, around all of us is a disruption. So I think violence in the schools, I think that, you know, as long as I'm sitting here, I will challenge us all to consider the whole learner and not just bits and parts that we're used to. We have to change because the youth population has changed, the needs of our learners have changed. And I'm happy to help do anything that we need to do to find different ways so that the burden doesn't solely fall on taxpayers.
Yeah, no, that's great, Jamie. And I agree that it's, I mean, we're already, you know, we're going to have a healthcare facility. I mean, we just have to start thinking outside the box as to how all the partnerships together can create what we need for the student, so that costs are spread across the board and everybody does a little bit and it adds up. So I think, you know, that's a good challenge to make sure that's what we're working on. You know, for me, I don't see it as, should we be doing this? Yeah, we should. What's the best way to do it in terms of fiscally? Just because things like not just the social workers, but you know, what is CPP? Am I saying that right? The CPP program, right? So that's looking great. Everybody's saying, hey, it's working. Okay, then the funding runs out. So all these great programs that come up, we already have that challenge with a couple things we're working on with Shawanki. So it's like, can you keep that up? Can you do that? Can you not? Because sometimes, you know, you have to find the sustainability of some of the funding. So I think we're more, and it is a good way to look at the whole learner, but how are we going to do that so that we can maintain that funding so it's not disrupted? So that's kind of where we are. Are there other questions about details of what the budget's looking like right now that you want to address before we move on? Because I know this is just the beginning, so as you dig into it, there will be. Yeah, Kurt.
I guess I would just ask Patrick and Katie, with all the reduction sheet, is that something that you feel is I guess doable? Is this, I mean, how much of a cut is this for the administration? Did you get a sense that, you know, $13,000 of supplies for instruction at the high school is going to be fine?
I'll let Patrick start.
Yeah, I don't know if fine is the right word, but it's, you know, I think it was painful for the administrators to go back. I think it's, they feel it's manageable, but it's, you know, it was challenging. And, you know, we gave them a percentage, and a few of them, you know, had a hard time getting to that percentage that we wanted to. But I think, you know, we'll still be able to offer the programming and, you know, that we usually do. So I think we're okay on that. And I think Lou kind of alluded to Bath Middle School. I mean, the connections, we're hopeful that we'll get that grant. So half is going in this year, and then hopefully we can get the other half in next year, because the grant's just for 1 year, but it'll help pay for those supplies that have gone well.
And I think that's good, Kurt, because then as we start to have these discussions, because it's the beginning of it, you know, even on April, we can ask again, okay, is the right thing to do, just as an example, a full 13,000? Should it be 10,000? And should we be pulling 3,000 from somewhere else? I mean, that's where you can start to get into some of that detail as to what is the most fair, as you know, as much as you can make this fair. You're always comparing apples to oranges in some respects, but what is the best way to do that? And that's a challenge with every budget, but this just is even more so, just with everything going on and where we've had to decide, you know, what's the priority or certain priorities this year. But, you know, keep questioning that and asking that, because that's helpful to, you know, ask again, is that okay? So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, Jennifer.
I just wanted, I was attending the regional school board meeting the other day of our kind of the mid-coast schools. And the gentleman running it said that DOE had considered using other criteria besides free and reduced hot lunch for regarding Title I. He said there was some movement on that. Katie, did you hear any kind of report back from DOE on those details?
The webinar is next week that I'm allowed to attend, and so I won't know anything till then. They didn't publish anything in writing, so I'm not sure what they're going to announce at the webinar.
Any other questions, details about what we've been presented with? Any comments? Katie, did you have some?
No, I was just going to add to the question that was just asked that I think, other than the difficulty a little bit in trying to reduce some of these, which they miraculously did a great job on, I think the other thing that's kind of bubbled up is their unanimous, in terms of the administrators, support for keeping social work as much as possible. Obviously, we have other things to juggle and consider as we're moving forward, but this was sort of the easiest year so far in terms of all of us. It was almost a non-conversation of that was, we always do our priorities chart, and that was everybody's number one across the board.
Great. So thanks for emphasizing that is this year the emphasis is on keeping that at least the one position for this cycle. I think the intent is at least to keep 2 of the 4 in the end after the next cycle is, I think, what the administration has been talking about, right? At least that much. So thanks for that. Anything else for tonight regarding the budget? So are people comfortable with the information they've gotten, even if you can agree, disagree, not sure, that's fine. But is it clear as to what direction we're going in? Is everyone okay with that? All right.
And before the 10th, I mean, if you have questions, just email. I mean, Jen emailed some questions today. I mean, anytime.
Yep, we've got to. And is it the 10th? It's here it'll be here 6 o'clock. Okay, so that's in 2 weeks. Okay. So that's what we'll be doing then. Well, thank you, everybody. And I just want to thank the administration and the staff for going through, nitpicking some of this stuff, saying, okay, I think we can live with this. It's just, it's great to see everybody give such detail and such time and effort to it. So thank you all for doing that. All right. Next is the school calendar. Natalie?
I was looking at it and I noticed that graduation is on a Sunday again. And I had a question about that because I know traditionally Morse has had graduation on Saturdays and Mount Ararat has had graduation on Sundays. And I know like this year, my aunt and uncle aren't going to be able to make it to my graduation because they have to attend the Mount Ararat graduation. And I'm wondering if we could keep the Morse graduation on a Saturday.
I'm going to defer to Patrick because I don't know the history on this. I feel like it's been on a Sunday for a while, and the Saturday was the exception. One year when we couldn't get it on a Sunday, but I could be wrong.
Because it was Saturday last year, but that's not the usual, at least in recent history. I thought it was Sunday.
It's usually a Sunday, right? Yeah, sorry.
So the calendar's presented. Any other questions on the?
I just wanted to add, I mean, it was a pretty quick and easy process because the calendar is so similar to this year's calendar that meeting with the vocational collaborating schools and the SEA was so simple. The only tricky part that we are going to keep bumping up against, which we already have slated to talk about for next year, is because Juneteenth is a newer holiday. When you add in 5 snow days, if we start after Labor Day, it gets a little tricky. For instance, on this proposed calendar, if we do 5 snow days, it's actually after Juneteenth one day, which makes it tricky this year we're going after Juneteenth, but it's multiple days. It's tricky to hold just one half day after a long weekend, which is usually such a wrap up day. And so if you're wondering about that, we essentially, when we were talking about it, thought, well, if we do go to, we'd have to see if it's exactly 5. If it's 6, it actually works out a little bit better than we go past. But if it is 5 exactly, we might want to do our another exceptional year where we take a few late starts away, just so we do have people showing up in full attendance on that last day. So they are aware that that's a consideration.
Okay.
Katie, how difficult is it to have a snow day, if we're coming up against that, to have a snow day that's just a remote learning day? Do we have those?
Oh, I should have included that as well. We do have plans for next year that all of our schools will get at least one late start in the fall to have remote snow day plans ready to go. We have them easily for Morse and fairly easily for like BMS and Woolwich middle schools, but it's the younger students who don't have devices at home that we just weren't ready for this year because it wasn't in the plan. But we will have the option of doing that next year, which I should have said is another option. Instead of taking away late starts, we could also do one from home if the electricity is, on. Mm-hmm.
Great. So any other questions on the calendar? Caroline, the calendar that I didn't think was controversial, but go ahead. No, go right ahead.
Sorry. This is not about this calendar, but I was wondering what the situation was with taking away late start Wednesdays for this year. Is that something we're going to do? I don't know if this is like
no, where are we at this year, Patrick?
I mean, we have one day to make up in Phippsburg because of no power. And so we'd rather have, because we're dealing with younger students, I think we're looking at having them the 5 Wednesdays in May of them starting at 8:30 when they normally would start at 9:30. And then the staff will stay an extra hour because the students will just get too tired at the end of the day. I mean, we have used late starts in the past, but we as an administrative team, we talked about it and we've got a lot of feedback from our staff that, when you take, a handful of those to 8 of those at the end of a year, it doesn't provide the teachers with time for kind of that transition planning for the next year, class placements, just, work that they need to do. And this community has supported the late start Wednesdays, and we just don't want to, get into that this year. We thought it was important to, to again be in person. It's kind of that balance that Katie was just talking about. I think we'll be ready. We could have been ready this year for remote days, but at the same time, in person is better than remote. I think next year, if we get to a certain level, if we get to 3 snow days and it's January, then we may have to consider some of those as a last resort. But I hope that makes sense.
Okay. Anything else on the calendar? All right. If there isn't, This is an action. Yeah, we got to approve the calendar. So Megan, where are you at?
School calendar.
All right, Megan moves to approve. Do I have a second? Jennifer seconds. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor? Okay, looks like we got a school calendar. Thank you. Thank you, Katie, for all that. All right, where are we at? Now we have first reading of board policies. We have cash management in schools, school properties disposition, bidding, purchasing requirements, and procurement staff code of conduct. You've had it in your packet, a chance to read it over, hopefully. Thank you again to the policy committee. Are there any questions, right? It's not action, so it'll be action next time, but is there any questions tonight? I think they were pretty straightforward. Nothing too controversial. Okay. Personnel items.
Yeah, just would like to, we have one resignation, Elizabeth Tracy, first grade teacher at Woolwich, and like to thank her for 2 years of service. And then we have a retirement, Sharon Pelton, who's our school nurse at Dyke Newell, and thank her for 1 year of service.
Great, thank you. Our next meeting, our next school board meeting is April 24th, right after spring break. but our next actual meeting will be our public forum here in 2 weeks on April 10th at 6 o'clock. So if there is no other concerns or business, may I have a motion to adjourn? Jamie, right on top of it. And who's second? And Megan is second. So all in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.